से यही घटे रही, कभी मैं कहूँ। गोपाला हरि का प्यारा नाम है, नंदलाला हरि का प्यारा नाम है।
आपका भजन से बिल्कुल सही सही टोन में सही ट्यून में गाया। जो गाना चाहे तो वो गा सकता है। ठीक है प्रभु जी, आपने उसको आवाज दी क्यों बनने वाली, उसका बिल्कुल भी ज्ञान नहीं रहा, आने नहीं थी सबके मन में।
राधे
नाम है वो तो है मम्मी, हमें भी मालूम है मम्मा।
इसको नहीं मालूम, इसको जरा बता दो कुछ थोड़ा सा।
बताओ मुझे, मम्मी चली गई तेरा क्वेश्चन सुन के।
Hare Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept our humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna. So let's start with prayers to Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrati Piyusha Sarva Vedika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya Sarva Loke Kadrik Prada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvantu Detaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostute Madeka Bandho Mat Sangin Mat Guru Man Mahandhana Mannestar Kamat Bhagya Madananda Namostute Asadu Sadhu Tadain Atini Chochatakara Ana Muncha Kadachin Mam Premna Hrit Kantayos Pura Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtapreshu Abhadreshu Nashtapreshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Yasya Prasada Dagyopi Sadya Sarva Gyatam Vrajet Sa Shri Chaitanya Devo Me Bhagavan Samprasidatu Vancha Kalptarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyate Deshatarine. So before we start, let's just pay our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual master so that our session today may be fruitful and nourishing. Okay, so if I remember correctly, we finished till 5th verse of 22nd chapter. Is that right? So does anybody remember what we did last time? At least in this chapter, what is happening in this chapter? Yeah, Anandlila Mataji?
So far we went through like Brahma's secondary creation, and then how it is, and also the next chapter then described about Kardama Muni, how he was living in his hermitage, and then how Lord Vishnu appeared, and then he meets him, and then Swambhu Manu comes and he speaks about his daughter, and and it also describes what how Devahuti was, and yeah, so that was it.
Okay, good. So anybody else? Jagat Mata Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Kadamba Muni and Swambhu Manu met. They glorified each other, and we elaborately discussed what is the role of Brahmanas and what is the role of Kshatriyas, and how they are complementary to each other and useful for the society.
Okay, Thank you so much. Thank you. So we saw in the last chapter ended with Kardama Muni glorifying Swayambhuva Manu. And in this chapter, we are seeing that now Swayambhuva Manu is glorifying Kardama Muni. So we can start with text 6. Who's reading?
It's my good fortune that I have been able to see you, for you cannot be seen easily. Cannot easily be seen by persons who have not subdued their mind or controlled their senses. I am all the more fortunate to have touched with my head the blessed dust of your feet.
Yeah, so Manu is speaking to Kardama Muni, and he's glorifying him by saying that I'm very fortunate to have touched my head to the blessed dust of your feet. And Prabhupada explains in the purport, Prabhupada says in the first para, beginning, the perfection of transcendental life can be achieved simply by touching the holy dust of the lotus feet of a holy man. In the Bhagavatam, it is said, Mahat Pad Rajobhishekam, which means to be blessed by the holy dust of the lotus feet of a Mahat, a great devotee. So Prabhupada is quoting from 5th canto. This is 5.12.12, Mahat Pad Rajobhishekam. So in this, it is said that not by celibacy, not by strictly following the rules and regulations of Grihastha ashram, not by all the austerities of Vanaprastha ashram, not by taking sannyas, not by performing severe penances in winter, by submerging oneself in the water, or by surrounding oneself in summer by heat or sitting under scorching sun, can one achieve self-realization. The only way to do that is smear one's body with the dust of a pure devotee. Mahat Pad Rajobhishekam. So that is what is said here, and Prabhupada is quoting this, that because Manu is saying that I'm more fortunate to have touched my head by the blessed dust of your feet. So now Prabhupada is saying talking about the value of the dust from the lotus feet of a great devotee. And Prabhupada continues in the same para, unless one is fortunate enough to have the dust of the lotus feet of a Mahatma on one's head, there is no possibility of perfection in spiritual life. And in the second para, he says, one becomes a Mahat by the grace of his spiritual master, Mahat spiritual master. If one takes shelter of the lotus feet of a great soul, there is every possibility of one's becoming a great soul. So even in CC Antya, it is said that Bhaktapad Dhuli or Bhaktapad Jal, Bhakta Bhukta Avashesh, Teen Mahabal, that these are the 3 Mahabal, very potent source of spiritual strength. So, and then Prabhupada is quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and his Guru Ashtakam prayers. And he says that in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's 8 stanzas of prayer to the spiritual master, it is clearly stated that simply by satisfying the spiritual master, one can achieve the supreme success in life, and in spite of executing all ritualistic performances, if one cannot satisfy the spiritual master, one has no access to spiritual perfection. So, very, very important point. And in this chapter and the next, we'll hear a lot about the glories of a spiritual master. So here Prabhupada is saying this, and the last line, he says, he has to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and work under his direction faithfully and sincerely. Then he becomes perfect without a doubt. So this is the key to success. And in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Prabhupada says that that success is achieved by the pleasure of a spiritual master. I'm paraphrasing, so he says something like this, that the only way one can receive success in spiritual life is by pleasing the spiritual master. So it's a very, very important topic. So I just want to ask, how do you think we can please the spiritual master? What pleases the spiritual master the most?
By serving him.
Serving him.
By
Okay.
following his instructions.
By following his instructions. Rai Ramananda Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, same by following the instruction of spiritual master.
Yeah, by following the instructions of spiritual master. So Prabhupada, in one of his lecture, he says that you're praising me, that's very good. That's good too. But the best offering you can do to me is actually follow my instructions. You know, you can be glorifying me, you can be offering flowers to me, you can be doing so many other things. That's good. But the best thing to do is to follow my instructions. So that's what Prabhupada is saying here also. Next, text 7.
Fortunately been instructed by you, and thus great favor has been bestowed upon me. I thank God that I have listened with open ears to your pure words.
Yeah, so Vaibhava Manu is saying that I have fortunately been instructed by you, and thus great favor has been bestowed upon me. What is the greatest favor of a sadhu? His instructions. Or even a spiritual master is his instructions. That's the real mercy, you know, not any other thing. The real mercy is to get instructions. So our responsibility is that when we approach sadhu, we should approach with an open ear. We should approach in a mood that I am willing to take instructions. I'm willing to hear, and I'm willing to take instructions, and I'm willing to follow it to the best of my capacity. And Prabhupada says in the purport, first the desiring candidate must find the bona fide spiritual master, and then he must very eagerly receive instructions from him and execute them. This is reciprocal service. A bona fide spiritual master or saintly person always desires to elevate a common man who comes to him. So they give instructions, and reciprocation is by following those instructions. This is how this relationship works. And then he says that it is a function of a saintly person to invoke Krishna consciousness in every forgetful common man. And how do they do that? By giving instructions. So if we don't take those instructions, if we don't go with an open ear and open mind, then actually we are not even letting them do their service properly. That's their service to Lord Krishna, to give instructions, proper instructions to everyone who approaches them. And then in the second para, Prabhupada says, second para is kind of long. So he says in the beginning, it is especially mentioned here that one should be very inquisitive to hear with open ears from the authorized source of the bona fide spiritual master. One should receive the transcendental message by oral reception. The favor of the spiritual master is not received through any other part of the body but the ears. So this is a very, very important thing to remember, that the favor of a spiritual master is received through the ears, not any other body part. And then he says, after a few sentences, the real fact is that a bona fide spiritual master knows the nature of a particular man and what sort of duties he can perform in Krishna consciousness, and he instructs him in that way. So we'll see that even in case of Prabhupada, he gave different instructions to his different disciples, very different instructions. So if you see one and you think that's what Prabhupada said, and you looked at somebody else, it would seem like completely different instruction. So we have to understand that the spiritual master knows what's the nature of a particular disciple and what he can do successfully. So he instructs him accordingly. And what he needs to do also. What are the qualities he needs to develop? What are the things he needs to do? And that's the way an instruction is given. And then Prabhupada says further down, there are different departments of activities in Krishna consciousness, and a spiritual master, knowing the particular ability of a particular man, trains him in such a way that by his tendency to act, he becomes perfect. And then again, after a few sentences, he says, one has to receive the message of the spiritual master regarding how to act in one's capacity, for the spiritual master is expert in giving such instructions. And then he quotes Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, and then towards the end, he says again, he should faithfully try to execute that particular instruction and should consider that his life and soul. The faithful execution of the instruction which he receives from the spiritual master is the only duty of a disciple, and that will bring him perfection. What is the only duty of a disciple? The faithful execution of the instruction that he has received from his spiritual master. That's the only duty of a disciple. Amrendra Hari Prabhu, you had your hand up. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Mataji, how a spiritual master knows about his disciple?
Because many ways, first of all, he's Sakshat Hari twin. They have a very, very strong connection with the super soul. So super soul reveals whatever needs to be revealed to the spiritual master. So they can tell exactly. If you must have had these very mystical experiences with spiritual masters. You know, you start asking a question, you say a word, and they exactly know what you're asking. You know, they start answering before you finish your question. So how does this happen? It's the super soul. The connection with the super soul is so strong that they exactly know what's going on in the heart of a disciple. So he knows what will work for you. What is it that you need to do? Is that okay?
Mataji, one confusion going in my life in 6 to 7 years. When I met with my spiritual master first time, when I was in IOF, going for initiation exam, or we can say interview. So my spiritual master tell me that you are going to serve in Rani and big temple is coming there. Go and a lot of people will come there and go and make 1 lakh devotee. So how he know about, because before that I never met him. And when second time in ashram I have asked that Mataji told me, so how it is not possible. So he told that Prabhupada has asked us and we are just trying. So how before any meeting, how he know anything about me?
He knows because, see, we have to understand Diksha is not a material process. It is not like, but Diksha is like a higher arrangement if done properly. You know, if proper approach is taken, then Diksha is actually a higher arrangement. So it's by Krishna's mercy that one gets a guru, and by Guru's mercy, one gets Krishna. So that's Krishna's mercy upon you. And then when you go in front of that spiritual master, Krishna, sitting as Paramatma in his heart and sitting in your heart, actually tells him what you can do, what you're capable of, what is it that you are all about. So we have to understand that this is a higher arrangement. This is not like, what we are so used to these dealings in the material world that if I didn't tell you, how did you know? But in spiritual world, this is how things happen. This is a spiritual relationship.
Mata, in previous time, there were Gurukul and spiritual master or a teacher used to teach all the students. And when students used to live in Gurukul, and after being time, he knows the nature of the student. And according to his nature, the spiritual master ordered that you should do this, you should get married, or you should do this. But my confusion is this, that when you don't know him, he don't know about you, how one can know exactly
Through the agency of
exactly or not?
through the agency of
How?
super soul. Through the agency of super soul. It is not whimsical, it is through the agency of the super soul.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
Jagat Mataji?
Hare Krishna. Mataji, my question is the same context with as Amrendra Hari Prabhu. I asked some, not the Guru Maharaj, my spiritual master, but I met some senior devotees, very senior devotees, and I asked for instruction in my life. What is instruction for me? Then he said, keep on doing what you are doing. And I asked 3-4 senior devotees, and they gave me the same instruction. So all the times, how can we relate it?
So you're confused at how they all gave you the same instruction. So you must be doing something great. That's why they're all saying, keep doing what you're doing. So, that's great if somebody says that. You keep doing what you're doing. That means you're on the right track. Okay. All right, so let's move. Text 8.
Text 8. O great sage, graciously be pleased to listen to the prayer of my humble self, for my mind is troubled by affection of my daughter.
Okay, so now Manu is making a request to Kardama Muni. So he says that now, please listen to my prayer because I have come here with my daughter. And Prabhupada says in the purport that when a disciple is perfectly in consonance with the spiritual master, having received his message and executed it perfectly and sincerely, he has a right to ask a particular favor from the spiritual master. So we can see how Prabhupada is using this entire conversation to give us the lessons that we need to know and need to learn. That how, when to ask a spiritual master, when you have rendered service submissively and you have pleased him, then you can go and ask him for something. So Prabhupada says, generally a pure devotee of the Lord or a pure disciple of a bona fide spiritual master does not ask any favor either from the Lord or the spiritual master. But even if there is a need to ask a favor from the spiritual master, one cannot ask that favor without satisfying him fully. So here we see that Manu has satisfied Kardama Muni with his prayers, and now he's requesting him, now he's asking him. And Prabhupada is using this context to give us a lesson that what is practical for us in our lives. Text 9.
My daughter is the sister of Priyavrat and Uttanpat. She is seeking a suitable husband in terms of age, character, and good qualities.
Yeah, so in the purport, Prabhupada says the purpose of Manu's introducing his daughter as the sister of Priyavrata and Uttanapa, two great kings, was to convince the sage that the girl came from a great family. She was his daughter and at the same time the sister of Kshatriyas. She did not come from a lower class family. So he was glorifying his daughter that she is fit to be accepted by you. She is not a lowly person. She is of a very high character. So you can accept her. Next, text 10.
The moment she heard from the sage Narada of your noble character, learning, beautiful appearance, youth, and other virtues, she fixed her mind upon you.
This happened with who else?
Rukmini Mataji.
Yeah, Rukmini, and who else? Amrendra Hari Prabhu, who else?
Brahman Patni.
Yes, the Brahman Patnis. They also heard about Krishna from all these tribal girls who used to come, and they heard about Krishna, and that's how they became fixed at his lotus feet. So Prabhupada says, hearing from an authority is a better experience than gaining personal understanding. She heard from Narad Muni that Karda Muni was just fit to be her husband. Therefore, she became fixed in her heart that she would marry him. She expressed her desire to her father, who therefore brought her before him. So she heard and she became attracted, and then she told her father about her attraction, and now Swayambhuva Manu is requesting Kardama to accept her. Next, 11.
Gita Krishna Prabhuji.
Therefore, please accept her, O chief of the Brahmins. I offer her with faith, and she is in every respect fit to be your wife and take charge of your household.
So Prabhupada in the purport talks about Grihamedi and Grihastha, the difference between the two types of householders. Grihamedis are those who marry for sense gratification, and Grihastha are those who marry for spiritual advancement. And at the end, he says that it is the duty of the wife to take charge of the household affairs and not to compete with the husband. A wife is meant to help, but she cannot help her husband unless he's completely equal to her in age, character, and quality. And later Prabhupada will also say that it's very important to see that the character of the two individuals match, or values of the two individuals match, their tastes match. Because if the if the temperament is not the same, it becomes very difficult to stay together peacefully and to execute the duties that are required. So Prabhupada will say that, and that's what he's saying here again. And he's saying that she cannot help unless and until she is in sync with him. Unless and until both are in sync with each other, it becomes very difficult to make spiritual advancement. Okay, next.
Text 12. To deny an offering that has come of itself is not commendable, even for one absolutely free from all attachment, much less one addicted to sensual pleasure.
Rukmini, you had a question?
Yes, Mataji, can you please tell an example that how to sync with a little bit to understand?
Prabhupada will tell in the later purport when he'll actually talk about Karamuni and Devhuti's marriage, that how a person with godly qualities should marry a godly quality person. If the qualities are not the same, the values are not the same, then there's always going to be friction in that life. Then it becomes very difficult. If there's no peace, if the Grihastha ashram is not peaceful, then it becomes very difficult to execute your duty and to make spiritual advancement. So he'll say that. And then he'll also say that in Kali Yuga, people just marry because of physical attraction. And they don't even pay much attention or much heed to what their temperaments are, what their values are, and act in haste and repent in leisure. So it's that just get married because of physical initial attraction, and then later on really repent all your life because that person is not in sync with you. Next. Sorry, we just read this one. So what he's implying is that the Lord has revealed to me that this is also your inner desire. You also want to get married, and I've come here. Now don't conceal your desire from me. Now, don't tell me that you don't want to get married. And he's giving an example that then offering has come on itself. Like, I'm offering you my daughter, and she is perfect for you. She's absolutely suitable for you. So please, don't reject her, accept that offering. And Prabhupada says in the purport, in material life, everyone is desirous of sense gratification. Therefore, a person who gets an object of sense gratification without endeavor should not refuse to accept it. Karda Muni was not meant for sense gratification, yet he aspired to marry and prayed to the Lord for a suitable wife. This was known to Swayambhuva Manu. He indirectly convinced Karda Muni, you desire a suitable wife like my daughter, and she is now present before you. You should not reject the fulfillment of your prayer. You should accept my daughter. Next, 13.
One who rejects an offering that comes of its own accord, but later begs a boon from a miser, thus loses his widespread reputation, and his pride is humbled by neglectful behavior of others.
So basically, sometimes people just reject, out of shyness. No, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want this. And later on, but since it is their desire, later on, they may end up going and asking from an unsuitable person who might just deny them. So that's why he's saying that by doing that, one will lose one's reputation. So don't reject. This is your desire. Here's a suitable girl. So now don't reject. So Prabhupada says in the purport that Swayambhuva Manu wanted to convince Kardama Muni since he knew that the sage wanted to marry a suitable girl. I'm offering just such a suitable wife. Do not reject the offer, or else, because you are in need of a wife, you will have to ask for such a wife from someone else who may not behave with you so well. In that case, your position will be humbled. And Prabhupada again continues in the second paragraph. He says, another feature of this incident is that Swayambhuva Manu was the emperor, but he went to offer his qualified daughter to a poor Brahmana. Karda Muni had no worldly possessions. He was a hermit living in a forest, but he was advanced in culture. Therefore, in offering one's daughter to a person, the culture and quality are counted as prominent, not the wealth or any other material consideration. And later Prabhupada will mention that in Kali Yuga is other way around. People see how wealthy, what's the income, if they have a house, what other assets before any other consideration. In Kali Yuga, it happens totally in an opposite way. Next, text 14.
Swayambhu Manu continued, O wise man, I heard that you were prepared to marry. Please accept her hand, which is being offered to you by me, since you have not taken a vow of perpetual celibacy.
So Prabhupada here talks about brahmacharya, that there are two kinds of brahmacharis. One is a Naishtika brahmachari, and the other one is Upkurvan brahmachari. So Naishtika brahmacharis are those who have taken a lifelong vow of celibacy. And then he clarifies that Kardama Muni had not taken that. That's why Swayambhuva Manu was offering his daughter to him. Wife is not offered to a person who has taken a vow of lifelong celibacy, to a Naishtika brahmachari. Next.
The great sage replied, certainly I have a desire to marry, and your daughter has not yet married or given her word to anyone. Therefore, our marriage, according to the Vedic system, can take place.
So now Kardama has heard all these arguments by Swayambhuva Manu. So he says that first, your daughter is not married, and second, she has not given her heart to anybody else. So both the conditions are, favorable. So yes, our marriage can happen. And the purport, Prabhupada says, there were many considerations by Kardama Muni before accepting the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. Most important is that Devahuti had first of all fixed her mind on marrying him. She did not choose to have any other man as her husband. That is a great consideration, because female psychology dictates that when a woman offers her heart to a man for the first time, it is very difficult for her to take it back. And at the end, Prabhupada says, Kardama Muni accepted the first class way of marriage because the father was willing and the daughter was qualified. She had never offered her heart to anyone else. All these considerations made Kardama Muni agree to accept the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. Yes. Next.
Text 16. That your daughter's desire for marriage, which is recognized in the Vedic scriptures, be fulfilled. You would not accept her hand. She is so beautiful that by her bodily luster alone, she excels the beauty of her woman's.
Yeah, so now Kardama Muni is saying that your daughter is absolutely suitable. She has a perfect character, perfect culture. She's very beautiful. So, I'll happily marry her. And then in the purport, Prabhupada talks about the 8 kind of marriages in Manusmriti. And he says that the lower classes of marriage were earlier not acceptable. In earlier ages, people would not opt for lower class marriages, but in Kali Yuga, there is no such consideration. So in Kali Yuga, things are completely topsy-turvy. So, Rukmini?
Mataji, I want to talk about which I have seen practically in ISKCON. I know few of my friends, like 4 friends, they were, my friends means they were in a female body. So they liked, they used to like some person, but they were in a devotional life. And it's very difficult to, if you marry a non-devotee, it's very difficult to proceed a spiritual life. So they left. I personally have seen 4 Matajis like this. So Mataji, how to understand that if a girl gives her heart to a man once like this, because now they all are married to, spiritual.
This is what Prabhupada is saying, that this is what used to happen in the Vedic system, that, a girl was married very early, but she would not go to her husband's house. She would live in her parents' house, and every day she would go and cook for her husband. She would go from her house to cook for her husband. And this is how attachment would develop. Because she would know from a very young age that this is the person I'm supposed to serve, and this is the person who's going to be my husband. And she would start serving at a very early age. And then the attachment would develop, and that attachment would be really, really strong because the basis was service. So when Prabhupada is saying this, that in such a scenario, then it is not possible to give your heart to anybody else, because from a very young age, that's the person you have thought of. So nowadays, things are very different. So maybe this is not applicable as it is, because things are so different now. First of all, nobody really gives their heart to anybody anymore. It's always the case of what's in it for me. How are you going to satisfy my desires? So it is always driven by that condition. What can you do for me? So the question of heart doesn't really come.
Thank you, Mataji.
Okay, so I'll just mention that the 8 kind of marriages. What are these 8 types of marriages? So you probably already know. So there's Brahma marriage, Deva marriage, Arsha marriage, Prajapatya, Asura, Gandharva, Rakshasa, and Paishacha. So these are the 8 kind of marriages mentioned in Manusmriti. So looks like that Kardama Muni and Devhuti, in their case, it was a Brahma marriage where a man of good qualities and a good family is asked to, accept a girl. So looks like that's why Prabhupada here is saying that this was the first class marriage, Brahma marriage. Next.
Text 17. I have heard that Vishwavasu, the great Gandharva, his mind stupefied with infatuation, fell from his airplane after seeing your daughter playing with the ball on the roof of the palace. For she was indeed beautiful with her tinkling ankle bells and her eyes moving to and fro.
Yeah. So Prabhupada in the purport talks about how there were, we should understand that there were big buildings, tall buildings earlier also, because how can somebody see from an airplane if the building wasn't like a tall building? How can somebody say who was there? And then he's also saying that also proves that there were airplanes. They are not like a recent invention. There were airplanes in earlier ages also. Next, text 18.
What wise man would not welcome her, the very ornament of womanhood, and the beloved daughter of Swayambhu Manu and sister of Uttanapad? Those who have not worshipped the gracious feet of the goddess of fortune cannot even perceive her, yet she has come of her own accord to seek my hand.
Yeah, so Kardama Muni is glorifying Devhuti's qualities, that she is a very suitable wife. She has all the great qualities. And then he says that she's a beloved daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and sister of Uttanapad. So the Acharyas mentioned that the reason he doesn't say sister of Priyavrata and Uttanapad, because Priyavrata had gone away. He was not there. So that's why he mentions only Uttanapad. Text 19.
Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from any.
Yeah, so Prabhupada, so Kardama Muni is actually making it very clear that I'm going to have a child with her, and after that, I'm going to accept sannyas. I'm not going to stay in Grihastha ashram forever. So he tells it in the beginning. And Prabhupada in the second paragraph of this purport, he says, Kardama Muni desired to beget a child who would be a ray of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who else wanted a ray of Vishnu? Bhaktivinoda Thakur, yes. So then he says, one should beget a child who can perform the duties of Vishnu. Otherwise, there's no need to produce children. There are 2 kinds of children born of good fathers. One is educated in Krishna consciousness so that he can be delivered from the clutches of Maya in that very life. The other is a ray of Supreme Personality of Godhead and teaches the world the ultimate goal of life. As will be described in later chapters, Kardama Muni begot such a child Kapila, the incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enunciated the philosophy of Sankhya. Great householders pray to God to send his representatives so that there may be an auspicious movement in human society. There is one reason to beget a child. Another reason is that a highly enlightened parent can train a child in Krishna consciousness so that the child will not have to come back again to this miserable world. Unless one can train a child for liberation in that life, there is no need to marry or produce children. So Prabhupada, very heavy words, that he's talking about the responsibility of a parent. And then later on in the same paragraph, Prabhupada says, Kardama Muni explains beforehand that he would not associate with the girl Devhuti for the whole duration of his life. He would simply associate with her until she had a child. And at the end, he's talking about Thakur Bhakti Vinod, that how he also prayed. for a ray of Vishnu, and as a result, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj was born. Next, text 20.
The highest authority for me is the ultimate supreme personality of Godhead, from whom this wonderful creation emanates and in whom its sustenance and dissolution rest. He is the origin of all Prajapatis, the personalities meant to produce living entities in the world.
So he's saying that the reason I'm doing this is because, I'm a Prajapati and this is my prescribed duty. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Kardama Muni was ordered by his father, Prajapati, to produce children. In the beginning of the creation, the Prajapatis were meant to produce a large population, which was to reside in the planets of the gigantic universe. But Kardama Muni said that although his father was Prajapati, who desired him to produce children, actually his origin was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, because Vishnu is the origin of everything. He is the actual creator of this universe, and he is the actual maintainer. And when everything is annihilated, it rests in him only. That is the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then later in this paragraph, Prabhupada says, Kardama Muni knew very well by his power in progressive spiritual life that Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, was his worshipable deity. Whatever Vishnu desired was his duty and nothing else. He was not prepared to beget a number of children. He would beget only one child who would help the mission of Vishnu. And then in the last paragraph, Prabhupada says, marrying and begetting a child is considered to liquidate one's debt to the family in which one is born. There are many debts which are imposed upon a child just after his birth. There are debts to the family in which one is born, debts to the demigod, debts to the pitas, debts to the rishis, etc. But if someone engages only in the service of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, who is actually worshipable, then even without trying to liquidate other debts, one becomes free of all obligation. And Kardama Muni preferred to devote his life as a servant of the Lord in Paramahansa knowledge and to beget a child only for that purpose. So this is there is a very nice verse in 11th canto, 11.541, which talks about this. Devarshi bhutapta niram pitranam na kinkarunayam rini charajan. That a person, who has satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for such a person, there are no debts left. He does not need to satisfy the demigods. He does not need to satisfy the rishis, doesn't need to satisfy ordinary people, doesn't need to satisfy his family, his pitras, nothing. No debt is left for such a person because he's Krishna conscious. Yeah, Rukmini?
Mataji, in text 19, in the second paragraph, we read, there are two kinds of children born of good fathers. One is educated in Krishna consciousness so that he can be delivered from the clutches of Maya in that very life, and the other is a ray of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Mataji, I just want to ask that, yes, two kinds of children born of good fathers. So if one is unable to, does it mean that the second type of child is like, if one is not able to preach, then at least he should be able to free him or herself from the clutches of Maya? Does it mean?
Yeah, it means basically one is a ray of Vishnu who can deliver others because he's already born as a Siddha. And the other one is a child who can take to Krishna consciousness so seriously that he can go back home, back to Godhead. So those two kind of children.
Thank you.
Next, 21.
Text 21, Sri Maitreya said, "O great warrior, Vidura, the sage Kardam said this much only and then became silent. Of his worshipable Lord Vishnu, who has a lotus on his navel. As he silently smiled, his face captured the mind of Devhuti, began to meditate upon the sage."
Yeah, so we can see his default setting. He said yes to the marriage, and immediately after that, he goes back on meditating on Vishnu. That's his default setting, that he goes back to meditating. He's not now thinking about, okay, who's this girl, what I need to do. No, his business is devotional service. He goes back. And Prabhupada says in the purport, it appears that Kardama Muni was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness because as soon as he became silent, he at once began to think of Lord Vishnu. This is the way of Krishna consciousness. Pure devotees are so absorbed in thought of Krishna that they have no other engagement. Although they may seem to think or act otherwise, they are always thinking of Krishna. And then Prabhupada says that the smile of such a Krishna conscious person is so attractive that simply by smiling, he wins so many admirers, disciples, and followers. Have you seen this? I'm sure we have all experienced this. That, yeah, this smile and all your worries evaporate in a second. Everything gets resolved with that smile. Okay, text 22.
Unmistakably known the decision of the queen as well as that of Dehuti, the emperor most gladly gave his daughter to the sage, whose host of virtues were equal by hers.
See, so again, here is mentioned that virtues were equaled by her. They were both virtuous souls. Next, 23.
Empress Shatrupa lovingly gave most valuable presents suitable for the occasion, such as jewelry, clothes, and household articles in dowry to the bride and the bridegroom.
Yeah, when we hear the word dowry in today's context, red flags come up. That, what is this dowry? So Prabhupada explains in the second paragraph that dowry system is not illegal, as some have tried to prove. The dowry is a gift given to the daughter by the father to show goodwill. And it is compulsory. In rare cases where the father is completely unable to give a dowry, it is enjoined that he must at least give a fruit and a flower. And then Prabhupada says further on, when there is a financial inability and no question of accumulating dowry by another means, one can give a fruit and flower for the satisfaction of the bridegroom. So we see that in Kali Yuga, things are so different. Dowry comes before the character of the girl. In today's time, people first ask, how much dowry are you going to give? And later they want to see what is the virtue of a girl or character of a girl. Next, 24.
Thus relieved of his responsibility by handing over his daughter to a suitable man, Swambhu Manu, his mind agitated by feeling of separation, embraced his affectionate daughter with both his arms.
Yeah, so Prabhupada says a father always remains in anxiety until he can hand over his grown-up daughter to a suitable boy. So now he's done that. So it's a bittersweet kind of a relationship that you really want her to go to a suitable man. And when that happens, there is separation, so it is bittersweet. So 25.
The emperor was unable to bear the separation of his daughter. Therefore, tears poured from his eyes again and again, drenching his daughter's head as he cried, "My dear mother, my dear daughter."
Yeah, and Prabhupada in the purport talks about how a woman is always dependent and should always be protected. Next, 27.
Gita Krishna Prabhuji.
After obtaining the great sage's permission to leave, the monarch took his chariot with his wife and started for his capital, followed by his retinue. On the way, he saw the prosperity of the tranquil seals, beautiful cottages on both the charming banks of the Saraswati. The river so agreeable to saintly sense.
Yeah, so Prabhupada talks about that how in earlier days, the saints would have their ashrams next to the rivers. And, the rivers would be pure, that entire place would be very tranquil. And they'll have ashrams. And that's how Manu and his wife boarded the chariot. And they passed by all these hermitages of different sages. 28.
Overjoyed to know of his arrival, his subjects came forth from Brahmavarta to greet their returning lord with songs, prayers, and musical instruments.
Yeah, so his subjects came, and Prabhupada says in the purport, it is the custom of the citizens of a kingdom's capital to receive the king when he returns from a tour. And later on, he says that here also the citizens of Bahishmati, the capital of Brahmavarta, The kingdom of Swayambhuva came nicely dressed to receive the emperor with decorations and musical instruments. So in our temples also we see this, some sannyasi, some advanced devotee comes, some guru comes, then all the devotees kind of get together and, they try to receive him nicely, him or her nicely. So we can see that 29:30.
The city of Braheshmati, rich in all kinds of wealth, was so called because Lord Vishnu's hair dropped there from his body when he manifested himself as Lord Boar. As he shook his body, this very hair fell and turned into blades of evergreen kusha grass and kasha, another kind of grass used for mats, by means of which the sages worshipped Lord Vishnu after defeating the demons who had interfered with the performance of their sacrifices.
Yeah. So Prabhupada gives a short but a nice purport. He says, any place directly connected with the Supreme Lord is called Pithasthan. Braheshmati, the capital of Swayambhuva Manu, was exalted not because the city was very rich in wealth or in opulence, but because the hairs of Lord Bara fell at that very spot. These hairs of the Lord later grew as green grass, and the sages used to worship the Lord with that grass after the time when the Lord killed the demon Hiranyaksha. So the opulence of a place is not like we see in wealth or, in riches, but because of its connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lakshmi?
Mataji, I want to know, there is no description of their marriage ceremony, like Phera or Mantran, like, so, because as you said, as it is written, that after accepting Dehuti as a wife, he just went back and sit in meditation again. And they left, like they gave all the dowry and jewelry, etc. But there is nothing, no mentioning about the ceremony.
Yeah, there is no mention. I can only take a wild guess. I don't know why Shukadev Goswami doesn't mention it. I can only take a wild guess that time is very less. Parikshit Maharaj only has 7 days. If you start describing each and every ceremony, he is not going to really hear the whole of Bhagavatam. So, then Shukadev Goswami uses his discretion to see what needs to be skipped and what needs to be told. So, yeah, it's accepted. They are married. Life is going on now. Okay.
Thank you.
Text 31.
Manu spread a seat of kushas and kash and worshipped the Lord, the personality of Godhead, by whose grace he had obtained the rule of the terrestrial globe.
So we can see the character of Kardama Muni, Manu, so similar. One is a Kshatriya, one is a Brahmana, but both have their default setting as worship of the Lord. He talked about getting a wife, accepted Devuti, immediately went on to worship, meditating on the Lord. Manu reaches his kingdom, and the first thing he does is start worship of the Lord. So we can see their character. And Prabhupada in the purport says that the descendants of Manu or human beings, especially those who are situated in a well-to-do condition, must consider that whatever riches they have are gifts from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those riches should be utilized for the service of the Lord in sacrifices performed to please him. And then he says, no one can achieve wealth, opulence, good birth, a beautiful body, or nice education without the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, those who are in possession of such valuable facilities must acknowledge their gratefulness to the Lord by worshipping him and offering what they have received from him. So what can we thank Krishna for? We should really understand how fortunate we are. So, Rukmini?
Mataji, everything is of Krishna's. The body is of Guru and Krishna. The intelligence which I have got of Krishna, whatever I think I possess, actually is of Krishna. I'm just using it. So everything actually is of Krishna. The intelligence, whatever. Yes.
Yeah, so Prabhupada here is saying, so first one must be grateful by acknowledging and then offer what they have received from him. So using one's skills, one talent, one possessions, one intelligence in the service of the Lord by offering it back to him is actual gratefulness. That's how we actually acknowledge our gratefulness, when we offer it back. That this is given by you, and now I'm going to use it only for your service. Okay, next. 32.
Having entered the city of Bhaishmati, in which he had previously lived, Manu entered his palace, which was filled with an atmosphere that eradicated the three misses of material existence.
The material world, Prabhupada says, the material world or material essential life is filled with threefold miseries: miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to natural disturbances, and miseries inflicted by other living entities. Human society is meant to create a spiritual atmosphere by spreading the spirit of Krishna consciousness. The miseries of material existence cannot affect the status of us of Krishna consciousness. It is not that the miseries of the material world completely vanish when one takes to Krishna consciousness, a very important lesson. But for one who is in Krishna conscious, the miseries of material worlds have no effect. We cannot stop the miseries of the material atmosphere, but Krishna consciousness is the antiseptic method to protect us from being affected by the miseries of material existence. For a Krishna conscious person, both living in heaven and living in hell are equal. How Swambhuva Manu created an atmosphere wherein he was not affected by material miseries is explained. So Prabhupada, this is a very instructive purport where Prabhupada says that, if one comes into Krishna consciousness, one should not expect that all my troubles will go away, all my miseries will end. And sometimes you'll hear like new devotees when they come to Krishna consciousness and they have some negative experiences. And then they start connecting the two. That is basically because I've taken to Krishna consciousness, that's why this is happening with me. Everything is going wrong. So this is a very instructive purport which is also for preaching and also for personal application. That we can tell others that it's not that your problems will end. So your problems will be there, but by the mercy of the Lord, first thing is that they will be lessened by a great degree. And second is what?
We will not be
It's a
affected.
test.
Sorry?
It's a test. It's a test to see
also
how steady you are in your Krishna consciousness. How much faith and reliance do you have on Krishna?
Okay. Raya Ramananda Prabhu, what were you saying?
Yes, we will not be affected by the.
Yeah. A devotee, Prabhupada talks about this, that a devotee does not get bewildered. It's not that when miseries come, at least like an average devotee, they get impacted, but they don't get bewildered. So there's a difference. Bewilderment means that you lose your faith in Krishna consciousness. You lose your faith in Krishna. Average devotee does not lose faith in Krishna consciousness, does not lose faith in Krishna. But they might get affected by that particular problem, but don't get bewildered. Annalila Mataji?
Here in the purport, the line where it's written, for a Krishna conscious person, both living in heaven and living in hell are equal. Oftentimes, it takes a while for anyone to come to that stage to see everything as equal. Is it because of the conditionings of the respective living entity, or is it because of not having enough faith in the process?
It is because of lack of connection. If there is a connection with the Lord, with the spiritual master, then it doesn't matter where you are. Externals don't matter. Because if one is constantly in connection with the Supreme Lord, you are in hell or heaven, it doesn't matter. But because the connection is not, that strong, it is weak. That is why external conditions bother us. And it is a very high level. And that is why Prabhupada says that for a Krishna conscious person, so sometimes we take it literally that because we are in devotional life, we are Krishna conscious. But it may take us a while to actually become Krishna conscious. And for a person who's actually Krishna conscious and who has a firm connection, for that person, heaven and hell are both the same. We can how we can understand that is that Nitya Siddhas, associate of the Lord, they come to the material world to preach. And why would they do that if it was such a hellish condition? but they come because the connection is so strong that they don't really feel that, it's an inconvenience. Their desire to serve the Lord, their desire to serve the Ishtadev is so strong. Because of that connection, they don't feel the misery of the material world. They are here only to uplift others. So this is how it works. But yes, it is a very, very high level. It is not a cheap thing to attain. It may take lifetimes to actually reach this level sometimes. It's a very high level.
Thank you.
33.
Emperor's son enjoyed life with his wife and subjects, and lives without being disturbed by unwanted principles, contrary to the process of religion. Celestial musicians and their wives sang in chorus about the creation. Early in the morning, every day, listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of the living.
Okay. So in this purport, Prabhupada explains that how one can become Krishna conscious. So this particular verse is about how Swambhuva Manu, even though he was in a position of a king, but still every day he would listen to the pastimes of the Lord. And in the purport, Prabhupada says in the first para, the Vedic principles are designed in such a way that the conditioned souls who have come to this material existence may be guided in fulfilling their material desires and at the same time be liberated and go back to Godhead. So the way these instructions are given, the Vedic instructions, because the living entity came to this material world with a desire to enjoy separately. So these instructions were given in a way that you enjoy in a way which is not counterproductive, and at the same time, carve your way back to Godhead. So this is what Vedic principles are. So Prabhupada says in the second para, it is understood that Emperor Swambhuva Manu enjoyed his household life by following these principles. It is stated here that early in the morning, there were musicians who used to sing with musical instruments about the glory of the Lord, and the emperor with his family personally used to hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Person. So early morning, he would start hearing about the glorification of the Supreme Lord. And at the end, then Prabhupada talks about how, this is still a custom in India that early morning people, royal families, they hear shehnais and, instrumental music, which is in mode of goodness, which helps them to actually remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at the end of this para, he says, the atmosphere created by this Sankirtan movement lives in their heart. He talks about how, the devotees, they get up early in the morning, they attend Mangala Aartis, and while sleeping, they also dream of the singing and glorification of the Lord. In such a way, perfection of Krishna consciousness can be attained. The practice is very old, as learned from this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Millions of years ago, Swambhuva Manu used to avail himself of this opportunity to live household life in the peace and prosperity of a Krishna conscious atmosphere. And then towards the end, he talks about, not in the middle of the second paragraph, he talks about temples within palaces are especially for the royal families, but in many of these palace temples, the public is also allowed to visit. And Prabhupada is going to talk about Govind Dev Ji, and he says, the temple of the king of Jaipur is situated within the palace, but the public is allowed to assemble. If one goes there, he will see that the temple is always crowded with at least 500 devotees. After the Mangala Aarti ceremony, they sit down together and sing the glories of the Lord with musical instruments and thus enjoy life. Temple worship by the royal family is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, where it is stated that those who fail to achieve success in the Bhakti Yoga principles within one life are given chance to take birth in the next life in a family of rich men or in a royal family. Did you ever think of Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe as temple worship? When we read that verse in Bhagavad Gita, that, people who have performed devotional service for some time, next life, they get Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe, like in a very pious or aristocratic family. And Prabhupada says that this is, they take birth in such royal families where, people are so pious, so dedicated, and that's how they continue their life. So And then Prabhupada ends with saying that if one gets opportunity to take birth in these families, he can achieve the facilities of a Krishna conscious atmosphere without difficulty. A child born in that atmosphere is sure to develop Krishna consciousness. The perfection which he failed to attain in his last life is again offered in this life, and he can make himself perfect without fail. So the lesson here is that if you're born in a Krishna conscious family, the responsibility is greater. If you're born to devotee parents, that just shows what? That shows what?
You learn bhakti in his previous life.
That you could not finish your bhakti in previous life. And that's why you have had to come back. So what is the responsibility? Not to come back again. Finish the business in this life. You know, so anybody who's born in a Krishna conscious family should know for sure that I was not successful last time. This is my chance to become successful in this life. 34.
Manu was a saintly king. Although absorbed in material happiness, he was not dragged to the lowest grade of life, for he always enjoyed his material happiness in a Krishna conscious atmosphere.
Yeah, so Prabhupada gives a very nice purport. He says, the kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal species, because of unrestricted sense enjoyment. But Swayambhava Manu was considered as good as a saintly sage, because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. The case is similar with the conditioned souls in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification. But if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere as depicted here or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship, household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. And then later towards the end, Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habit in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So next, text 35.
Consequently, although his duration of life gradually came to an end, his long life, consisting of a Manvantar era, was not spent in vain, since he ever engaged in hearing, contemplating, writing down, and chanting the pastimes of the Lord.
Yeah, so see, I mean, he has a long life, right? So a Manvantar, and he spent in what? About hearing, contemplating, writing down. Looks like Manu was writing also and chanting the pastimes of the Lord. So what was he writing?
Manu Samhita, Mataji?
Yeah, Manu Smriti, Manu Samhita. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that as freshly prepared food is very tasteful, but if kept for 3 or 4 hours, becomes stale and tasteless. So the existence of material enjoyment can endure as long as life is fresh. But at the fag end of life, everything becomes tasteless and everything appears to be vain and painful. The life of Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, however, was not tasteless. As he grew older, his life remained as fresh as in the beginning, because of his continued Krishna consciousness. The life of a man in Krishna consciousness is always fresh. So then he quotes this verse from the second canto, Ayur Harati Vaipumsam, that it is said that by sunrise, that the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening, and its business is to reduce the duration of everyone's life. But the sunrise and sunset cannot diminish the life of one who engages in Krishna consciousness. So we can see in case in our movement also, there are devotees who are very strongly, engaged in Krishna consciousness. As they grow older, their enthusiasm does not wane. It is not like, oh, now we are good for nothing, we are useless. They find different ways of serving Krishna. Maybe not the same way they were serving Krishna earlier, but they find different ways of serving Krishna. So it's very interesting that this particular verse, that Ayur Harati Vaipumsan, is always used in a context of death. But here, Prabhupada is using it in the context of old age, that not only a devotee does not face death, but a devotee does not even becomes old in the normally accepted sense of the word. The body becomes old, but because of Krishna consciousness, he is always alive. He is always fresh. Next, 36.
He passed his time, which lasted 71 cycle of the 4 yugas, always thinking of Vasudev and always engaged in matter regarding Vasudev. Thus he transcended the predestination.
Yeah, so just see the amount of time he spent thinking of Vasudev and engaged in the matters regarding Vasudev. So 71 yuga cycles, that's an incredibly long time. And then Prabhupada in the purport talks about the 3 destinations, that these 3 destinations are Jagriti, Swapna, and Sushupti. You know, that those are the 3 destinations. He says the 3 destinations are meant for persons who are under control of 3 modes of material nature. These destinations are sometimes described as awakened, dreaming, and unconscious stages. In Bhagavad Gita, the 3 destinations are described as the destination of persons in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So Jagriti is goodness, and Swapna is passion, and Sushupti or deep sleep is ignorance. So these are the 3 stages. And then Prabhupada says in the same paragraph towards the end, but one who's Krishna conscious is above these 3 modes of material nature. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who engages in devotional service to the Lord automatically becomes transcendental to the 3 destinations of material nature and is situated in the Brahma Bhuta or self-realized stage. Although Swambhuva Manu, the ruler of this material world, appeared to be absorbed in material happiness, he was neither in mode of goodness nor in the modes of passion or ignorance, but in the transcendental stage. Let's carry on. 37.
Therefore, O Vidura, how can persons completely under the shelter of Lord Krishna in devotional service be put into miseries pertaining to the body, the mind, nature, and other men and living creatures?
So Maitreya is asking Vidura that how is that possible for a Krishna conscious person to, to actually be put into these kind of miseries? When and if we think about that purport by Srila Prabhupada, then we can understand that the miseries would be there, but a Krishna conscious person does not experience these miseries. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that every living entity within this material world is always afflicted by some kind of miseries, pertaining either through the body, the mind, or natural disturbances. Distresses due to cold in winter, severe heat in summer, always inflict miseries on the living entities in this world. But one who has completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in Krishna consciousness is in the transcendental stage. He is not disturbed by any miseries either due to the body, mind, or natural disturbances of summer and winter. He's transcendental to all these miseries. Yeah, so if we are not transcendental to all these miseries, what does it imply? That we have a long way to go before we become Krishna conscious. Text 38.
In reply to the questions asked by certain sages, he, out of compassion for all the living entities, taught the diverse sacred duties of man in general and the different varnas and ashrams.
Yeah, so it is being mentioned that out of his compassion for all living entities, Swayambhuva Manu, he is an incarnation to speak Dharma. He actually will end up giving the duties for different varnas and ashrams. Rukmini?
Mataji, as per my stage, if I see, yes, I'm not liberated yet. I'm in a process, and to sustain my body, I need all the comforts. So if I see the liberated souls, this like Guru Maharaj or senior devotees. So can you please help me understand a little bit that they also, to sustain their body, or if to talk about Srila Prabhupada also used to take, they also wear warm clothes, be in the AC or in a heater or like this. So how to understand this more, Mataji?
they are not disturbed. It's not that they don't feel, they are not disturbed. You know, we have to see what Prabhupada is saying. He's not saying that they'll not feel the misery, but they're not disturbed by that misery. You know, they feel the cold, so they dress accordingly, but they're not disturbed. What do? If it's too cold for like 2 hours, we just talk about how cold it is and how we are not able to function, or how hot it is and, you know, we are not able to function. But these people, they feel it, but they are not disturbed by it. They carry on. They do what they need to do, and then they carry on. That's the difference. Yeah. 39.
I have spoken to you of the wonderful character of Swambhu Manu, the original king whose reputation is worthy of description. Please hear as I speak of the flourishing of his daughter Devuti.
Yeah, so Maitreya has now spoken about Swambhuva Manu, and in the next chapter, he's going to talk about Devahuti. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 22nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Yes, Rukmini.
Mataji, I was getting requests. Can we read a few verses also, because devotees are finding it's these are some of our very beautiful verses. If we
Yeah,
can
they
read.
are. You can read. Whoever wants to read can read. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
You know, if you want to read a verse, please go ahead, read it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not reading it because I feel that I have limited time. But if you want to read it, go ahead. Okay. So I think let's take a break now, and then we'll start the new chapter. So we will come back at 11:30. It's 11:17 right now. We'll come back at 11:30. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome back. So let's start the 23rd chapter, Devhuti's Lamentation. So start reading.
Text 1, chapter 23. Maitreyi continued, after the departure of her parents, the chaste woman Devahuti, who could understand the desires of her husband, served him constantly with great love as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband.
Yes. So now Devhuti is with her husband and her parents have left. So she serves him, and the example given here is of Lord Shiva and Parvati. So in another respect, they are similar because Parvati was also a daughter of a king, and Shiva had no possessions, and she married him and served him. And similarly, that's why this example is given, because Devhuti was also a daughter of a king, and she married Kardama, who had no worldly possessions. So Prabhupada in the purport says, at the end of the purport, he says, the wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal for householder's life. That a husband, because a wife is serving a husband, and whatever husband is performing devotional service, wife gets half of that credit because she's helping him in his spiritual advancement by serving him. Next.
Working sanely and diligently, she pleased her very powerful husband, giving up all lust, pride, envy, greed, sinful activities, and vanity.
Yeah. Sorry, which one did you read? No, second. We have to read second.
Oh, sorry, Mataji. I just thought.
No problem.
O Vidur, Devahuti served her husband with intimacy and great respect, with control of the senses, with love and with sweet words.
Yeah, so this is a very beautiful verse. Vishwambhenatma Shauchena Gauravena Damena Cha. So very important words are used here. So I did some research. Vishwabhenatma. Vishwabhen. Now this is a word which is actually used Vishwabhen Guru Seva. When in NOD 64 items are given, the third one is Vishwabhen Guru Seva. That means to serve with intimacy, with the feeling of friendship, serving the Guru. And Shauchena, and then Gauravena. Gauravena Gurur Vacha. This will also come later in 24th chapter. That how should one serve a Guru? With great respect. Gauravena Gurur Vacha. So, and then there's another word, Shushushaya. Shushushaya is something that we hear about in the first canto also, Shushusho Shadadhanasya. Right? So Shushushaya means in Prabhupada in 731, he mentions about Shushushaya that it's a very special kind of service. It means menial service, that rendering menial service to the spiritual master. So each word can be seen to reveal the attitude of a disciple, that how a disciple must be situated. And Prabhupada, in this chapter, in a lot of purpose, Prabhupada will actually talk about Guru, importance of Guru, how Guru should be served. So even this verse can be used to understand the attitude of a disciple while serving one's guru. So Prabhupada says here two words are very significant. Devhuti served her husband in two ways, Vishwambhena and Gauravena. These are two important processes in serving the husband or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here husband is like her guru. Vishwambhena means with intimacy and Gauravena means with great reverence. The husband is a very intimate friend. Therefore, the wife must render service just like an intimate friend. And at the same time, she must understand that the husband is superior in position. Thus, she offers him all respect. Now, towards the end, Prabhupada says, according to Vedic civilization, a wife cannot call her husband by name. In the present civilization, the wife calls her husband by name, but in Hindu civilization, she does not. Because now in Kali Yuga, everything is so topsy-turvy. And at the end, Prabhupada says, Sahedrena vacha madhuraya, means always desiring good for the husband and speaking to him with sweet words. A person becomes agitated by so many material contacts in the outside world. Therefore, in his home life, at least, he should be peaceful. He should be treated properly by his wife. Next, third.
Working sanely and diligently, she pleases her very powerful husband, giving up all lust, pride, envy, greed, sinful activities, and vanity.
Yeah, so we can say, we can compare her attitude with that of Diti. You know, she has great patience. She does not have any lust. She has no envy, no greed. And we can compare. And because of the attitudes, we can see the difference in the results. And Prabhupada in the purport says, here are some of the qualities of a great husband's great wife. Kadava Muni is great by spiritual qualification. Such a husband is called Tejasyamsam, very powerful. Although a wife may be equal to her husband in advancement in spiritual consciousness, she should not be vainly proud. Then later he says she must always be submissive to the husband and must give up all her vanity. And their devotee was very careful about that, and therefore it is said here that she gave up her pride completely. Yes, Mataji, Jagat Mataji.
Maji, my question is from the previous verse. In the purport, after that, what you have read, thus the inferiority and the superiority complexes are recognized. Can you elaborate it more, Mataji? What is Upaj here want to say?
That Prabhupada mentions in another purport that the men have an inherent ego. You know, their ego needs to be satisfied. So in the householder life, the wife must satisfy his ego by treating him as superior. So that is why his name is not said or he's treated with respect in that respect also. And if he's spiritually more advanced, then all the more reason. And women by nature need protection. They are by nature dependent. So in that sense also, it is a good idea to follow this. Because a man who's who's properly respected, a man who's properly taken care of, will end up protecting his wife, will end up giving her shelter. In today's time, we don't always see that, but this is what is expected. Is that okay? 4, 5.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. You have a question, Amarendra Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, go ahead.
Means, Mataji, this rule, how it happen in ashram, Mataji, between senior and junior devotees or brahmacharis. They are having their more ego, and junior devotee need to satisfy their ego, or what is?
So what's your question, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji. How these rules work in ashram?
I can tell you how it should go. How it goes is something I cannot really comment on. How it should go is it is said in the scriptures that as one advances spiritually, senior is taken differently by different varnas, different varnas. For a Shudra, seniority is by age. For a Vaishya, seniority is by diksha or service. I think one of them. and or maybe wealth maybe. And Kshatriya by Diksha and Vaishnava by spiritual advancement. Like for a Brahmana, who is more spiritual, who's senior, one who's more spiritually advanced. And that person could be, he could have entered the temple yesterday, but if he's more spiritually advanced, then he's considered as senior. In Kshatriyas by Diksha, who got initiated first, is considered as senior. In Vaishyas, who's more wealth, is considered as senior. And in case of Shudra, who's older, is considered as senior. So if somebody is considering oneself as senior, then it's their problem. But if we are in a, if we are expected to give respect, there's no harm, we can give respect. We are supposed to respect everybody anyways. So we should not really worry about whether they're senior, junior, whatever. Our idea is to give respect to everyone.
What about male ego? Because everyone is male here.
Yeah, so male ego should go down as you progress, because ego in itself should go down as you progress. One has to understand. But male ego normally surfaces when it is in question of a female. Male ego does not really surface with males. It does not surface with males. It surfaces when it's the opposite gender. So ashram, I don't think male ego should be a problem. In ashram, vanity may be a problem, pride may be a problem, but I don't really think male ego is a problem. Is that okay?
Thank you.
4, 5.
The daughter of Manu, who was fully devoted to her husband, looked upon him as a greater even than Providence. Thus she expected great blessings from him. Having served him for a long time, she grew weak and emaciated due to her religious observances. Seeing her condition, Kardan, the foremost of celestial sages, was overcome with compassion and spoke to her in a voice choked with great love.
So we can see the contrast with Diti here also. She has a desire, but she's waiting patiently for Kardama Muni to fulfill her desire. And Kardama Muni, being very pleased by her attitude, will offer her that, what do you want? He will say that, and I will, try to fulfill that desire of yours. So this is in such a contrast with Diti. So Prabhupada says, the wife is expected to be of the same category as the husband. She must be prepared to follow the principles of the husband, and then there will be happy life. If a husband is a devotee and the wife is materialistic, there cannot be any peace in the home. The wife must see the tendencies of the husband and must be prepared to follow him. Then he gives the example of Gandhari, that by, we read in Mahabharata, that by following Dhritarashtra, by, acting as a blind person and following in the footsteps of Dhritarashtra, she developed so much power. Her, sight developed so much power that she could bestow so much benediction just by her glance. So, and we see, in our scriptures, even Draupadi, by following her husbands, she developed so much power. So Prabhupada is here giving example of Gandhari. And then he says that it is the duty of a wife to adopt the special circumstances in which the husband is situated. Of course, if the husband is as great as Kardama Muni, then a very good result accrues from following him. But even if the husband is not a great devotee like Kardama Muni, it is a wife's duty to adapt herself according to his mentality. Rukmini.
My mind is materialistic. So I asked this question from my materialistic mind. Mataji, Gandhari took the decision to tie, not to see like the Dhritarashtra. So
Your voice is breaking.
This, my materialistic mind.
Your voice is breaking. I'm not really able to understand. Try it again.
Mataji, instead of tying, a cloth, not to see, taking a decision. Okay, I just stop my video. It will be more. My internet is not stable, Mataji.
No problem.
So, yeah. So Mataji, I'm saying that she could help more to her husband instead of doing this, what she did.
Okay, so it is actually it depends on different circumstances. If you study the character of Dhritarashtra, he's always suffered from this inferiority complex. You know, that I was supposed to get the kingdom, I did not because I was blind. So, you know, to make him feel peaceful, she also became blind so that he'll at least be happy. You know, that, okay, you know, there is somebody who's subordinate to me. There's somebody who's at least below me, or if not even that, at least equal to me. So that's why, understanding her husband's nature and her husband's, mentality, she chose to do that. But in some other case with a different kind of person, maybe that route would have been better. So it depends from person to person. It's, one has to see. Jagat Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. How Gandhari came to know about his nature, because earlier days it was.
So earlier days, Prabhupada mentions in many of his purports that marriages were not just fixed just like that. You know, parents used to study the boy, that is this person of this nature, will my daughter will be able to stay with him, adapt with him or not. And that's how marriages were fixed. And Prabhupada mentioned in the purport just few verses back when we were talking about, different kind of marriages and all that. So Prabhupada mentions that in earlier days, her parents used to fix a match after studying the natures, and if the nature would correspond. So that is why they would know, and she would know what's the nature of my husband and how am I supposed to behave? How am I supposed to adapt to that?
It means Gandhari must have taken her decision in the guidance of the seniors or priest.
Yes, of course. In Vedic society, decisions are always taken in consultation with the Brahmanas. Kshatriyas don't act independently. They consult the Brahmanas. Whenever they have acted independently, we can see that, things start going awry. So,
yes, Mataji, I have one more question, Mataji. In Vedic times, girls used to get married at the early age, and in this situation, it's difficult to. It was easier to adapt the situation. Adapt the person of another person's quality, act accordingly. True. But nowadays, girls marry at the later age. At that age, their own mentality, their own way of thinking already established. Then it become very difficult for them to adapt the qualities or act accordingly to them.
Yes.
So how it can be managed, or the
see, nowadays nothing is actually working according to Vedic society. But see, consider a situation why the girls don't want to get married in an early age, because all their lives they have competed in schools with boys, and they have competed, they have studied, and they have come to say a certain degree. Now they think that, okay, all my life I've competed. Now I don't want to just get married at the age of say 19, 18. I want to do something with my career. Now that mentality is set. It's very difficult to change that mentality once they have done that all their lives. So if the girls were like educated, say in a Gurukul kind of a system from beginning, their mind is like that, then it is possible. That's how it used to happen in Vedic society, because they were, mostly educated at home, or even educated with similar kind of girls, and they all were given certain kind of values. So it is not even realistic that in today's time, we put girls through all this grind at an early age and then expect them to get married at an early age. It won't happen. These two things are not compatible. It is not even realistic to expect that. So unless and until that whole fabric is in place, we can't get the result that we want. Amrinda Hari Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, in the purport, Prabhupada is written, Mataji, but even if the husband is not a great devotee like Kardam Muni, it is the wife's duty to adopt herself according to his mentality. So, Mataji, my question is that if Mataji or wife is great devotee of the Lord or spiritually advanced, and if the husband is rascal, Mataji, and you do whatever materialistic things, so how she will advance in spirituality if she will follow the materialistic husband?
So Prabhupada gives somebody asked Prabhupada this, and Prabhupada gave a very good example of his own sister. She was initiated by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. She was a great devotee from her childhood. We hear so much about her, known as, Pishima, that Prabhupada and she used to worship Radha Govinda deities from a very, very early age. She was a very Krishna conscious person, but her husband was a meat eater. When she got married, her husband was a meat eater and also used to sometimes beat her. So, and Prabhupada says that she used to make meat for him. She would cook for him and she would serve him. And at the later age, he realized this my wife has served me all my life. And he cried and asked for her forgiveness. So, but now this depends on individuals. Some people may be willing to go through this. Some people may not be willing to go through this. But Prabhupada gives a guideline that if a husband, however fallen he may be, first of all, if he's not stopping you from your Krishna consciousness, if he's letting you practice your Krishna consciousness, and he's not acting as an obstacle on that path, then you can continue to serve him. But if it comes to the point where he does not let you follow Krishna consciousness, then one can consult the seniors and decide the next course of action. But serving is, by service, I've seen so many examples in practically also, that if the wife is initiated serving, but serving her husband, those husbands at a later stage have become devotees. Maybe it takes 5-10 years. They become devotees and they become initiated, and sometimes they progress even faster than the wife. So, it depends. If it is done properly, it can actually give miraculous results. Is that okay? Or do you have any other question?
Okay, Mataji. So she should serve whatever nature the man.
As far as possible. Yeah, it also depends on the nature of the wife, what she can do sanely and what she can't do sanely. So as far as possible.
And in vice versa case, Mataji?
Same, all the more responsibility. If the wife is not a devotee and a husband is a devotee, then all the more responsibility that, you try whatever you can to at least, make her materially comfortable and at least make her spiritually inclined. Because normally what happens is that when wives are not devotees, men tend to become pure devotees. And in the sense of acting as pure devotees, and they start depriving their wives of all kind of facilities. So that is very counterproductive. One should give the wife for the facility, material facility, and then try to inspire them to become spiritually inclined. That's how it works. Text 6. Amrendra Hari Prabhu, I'm hoping that you're asking these questions to preach.
Mataji.
Because you have nothing to do with this ashram otherwise, right?
Yes, Mataji, but I have faced these questions, Mataji.
Yeah, for preaching. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Rukmini.
Mataji, can I say one statement?
Yes, please go ahead.
I heard Prabhupada saying this, that if a spouse is spiritual, if your spouse is spiritual, your progress in Krishna consciousness will be fast. But if your spouse is non-devotee, you will become a pure devotee.
Yes, because you'll have to tolerate so much. You'll learn to tolerate so much that your purification will happen very fast. Okay, text 6. Somebody read, please.
Text 6. Gautam Muni said, "O respectful daughter of Sambhava Manu, today I am very much pleased with you for your great devotion and most excellent loving service. Since the body is so dear to embodied beings, I am astonished that you have neglected your own body to use it on my behalf."
Yeah, so we are getting such a exalted example of Devhuti. What an incredible person she is. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, it is indicated here that one's body is very dear. Yet Devhuti was so faithful to her husband that not only did she serve him with great devotion, service, and respect, but she did not even care for her own health. That is called selfless service. It appears that Devhuti had no sense pleasure even with her husband, otherwise she would not have deteriorated in health. Acting to facilitate Kardama Muni's engagement in spiritual elevation, she continually assisted him, not caring for bodily comfort. So we can see she's a daughter of an emperor. And she's serving him so meanly that she has not been able to take care of her body. And later on, it will be mentioned that how her locks are all matted, her hair has become matted because she has no time to take care of her hair. She's serving her husband all the time. Next, text 7.
Kardama Muni continued, I have achieved the blessings of the Lord in discharging my own religious life of austerity, meditation, and Krishna consciousness. Although you have not yet experienced these achievements, which are free from fear and lamentation, I shall offer them all to you because you are engaged in my service. Now just look at them. I am giving you the transcendental vision to see how nice they are.
See, so he's offering her transcendental blessings. And in the purport, Prabhupada says in the second paragraph, what are the graces of the Lord? So let's, before we read further, what are the graces of the Lord? So we see it from the verse itself, free from fear and lamentation. This is the grace of the Lord. And Prabhupada says, it is stated here that the graces of the Lord are abhaya, free from fearfulness. In the material world, if someone accumulates $1 million, he's always full of fear because he's always thinking, what if the money is lost? But the benediction of the Lord, Bhagavad Prasad, is never to be lost. So he's offering her Bhagavad Prasad. And it is simply to be enjoyed. There's no question of loss. One simply gains and enjoys gaining. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when one achieves the grace of the Lord, the result is that sarva dukhani, all distresses are destroyed. When situated in the transcendental position, one is freed from two kinds of material diseases, hankering and lamentation. So this is, which verse is this in Bhagavad Gita? Free from all hankering and lamentation?
Na sochati na kansati.
Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati. This is also stated in Bhagavad Gita. After devotional life begins, one can achieve the full result of love of Godhead. Love of Krishna is the highest perfection of Bhagavad Prasad or divine mercy. Mad bhakti labhate param. So then Prabhupada continues that Prabodhanand Saraswati said that if one achieves the grace of Lord Chaitanya, he becomes so great that he does not care a fig, even for the demigods. He thinks of the monism as hellish, and for him, the perfection of controlling the senses is as easy as anything. So what is he saying? That for him, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga are of no significance. Because even for the demigods is basically Karma Yoga. And then monism is Jnana Yoga. And perfection of controlling the senses is Ashtanga Yoga. For such a person, he has nothing to do with Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Ashtanga Yoga. Then in the second paragraph, Prabhupada continues, by the grace of Kardama Muni, Devhuti experienced actual realization simply by serving. So then he says that he takes the example of Narad Muni, that how Narad Muni, by serving the great devotees of the Lord, he also got, actual realization simply by serving the Bhakti Vedantas. And that Prabhupada says that for spiritual achievement, the easiest path is to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and serve him with heart and soul. And then he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Yasya prasadat bhagavad prasado. By serving or receiving the grace of the spiritual master, one receives the grace of the Supreme Lord. By serving her devotee husband, Kardama Muni, Devhuti shared in his achievements. Similarly, a sincere disciple, simply by serving a bona fide spiritual master, can achieve all the mercy of the Lord and the spiritual master simultaneously. So highlight this, this is a very, very important statement. Next, text 8.
Kardama Muni continued, what is the use of enjoyments other than the Lord's praise? All material achievements are subject to be annihilated simply by a movement of eyebrows of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By your principles of devotion to your husband, you have achieved and can enjoy transcendental gifts very rarely obtained by a person proud of aristocracy and material positions.
Yeah, so he's saying that I can give you incredible devotional gifts. And he says that if one has achieved, the grace of Supreme Lord, then what use is for the other things? And one who has not received the grace of the Supreme Lord, then also what's the use of the other things? Either way, the material possessions are of no use. And Prabhupada says in the purport, Lord Chaitanya recommended that the greatest achievement of human life is to achieve the grace of the Lord, love of God. He said, Prema Pumartho Mahan. To achieve love of Godhead is the highest perfection of life. And the same perfection is recommended by Kardama Muni to his wife. And in the second last paragraph, Prabhupada says, love of God is not an ordinary commodity. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was worshipped by Rupa Goswami because he distributed love of God, Krishna Prema Pradayate, to everyone. Rupa Goswami praised him as Mahavadanyaya, a greatly munificent personality, because he was freely distributing to everyone love of Godhead, which is achieved by wise men only after many, many births. Krishna Prema, Krishna consciousness is the highest gift which can be bestowed on anyone who we presume to love. So whoever we are presuming to love, this is the gift we are supposed to give to them. Okay, next, text 9.
Upon hearing the speaking of her husband who excelled in knowledge of all kinds of transcendental science, innocent Devahuti was very satisfied. Her smiling face shining with a slight bashful glance, she spoke in a choked voice because of her humility and love.
Next.
Sri Devahuti said, my dear husband, the best of I know that you have achieved perfection and are the master of all the infallible mystic powers, because you are under the protection of your Maya, the transcendental nature. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should not fulfill, since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband.
So he's giving her Bhagavad Prasad and she's saying what? That I want children. I want children. And we will see that at the end, this is what she's going to lament. This chapter is titled Devuti's Lamentation. And we see that, she seems to be very happy serving. So where's the lamentation? This lamentation will happen at the end because of this very reason, that he's giving her Bhagavad Prasad. And she says that I want children that you had promised. And Prabhupada, in this purport, towards the end says, both Kardamuni and Devahuti were spiritually enlightened. Therefore, she desired from the beginning that first she be pregnant and then she be empowered with the achievement of God's grace and love of God. For a woman, it's a great ambition to have a son of the same quality as a highly qualified husband. Since she had the opportunity to have Kardama Muni as her husband, she also desired to have a child by bodily union. So she's the Rukmini.
Mataji, does it simply says that she should not have asked for the children and
No, this will be her lamentation. This is what she is going to lament. If she had not asked for children, then Kapila Muni would not have come, Sankhya Yoga philosophy would not have come. So it's not that, but this is what she's going to lament. That, my husband was giving me spiritual knowledge and I asked for children. So we'll see, we'll soon see.
And Mataji, does it mean like Kardamuni is a Kardamuni like Mataji, a pure devotee? He was only attained the love of God and he can give love of God to Devahuti. Does it mean like this, Mataji?
Yes.
Okay. Means she could get love of God.
Yes.
As they are saying that Rupa Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are giving the example. Prabhupada is giving the example. So now, but she asked for this and she thought that later she can ask for love of God. Thank you, Mataji.
11.
Devahuti continued, my dear Lord, I am struck by excited emotion for you. Therefore, kindly make what arrangements must be made according to the scriptures so that my skinny body emancipates emaciated through unsatisfied passion, may be rendered fit for you. Also, my lord, please think of a suitable house for this purpose.
So Devhuti is now requesting him that, my body is all skinny, I'm all emaciated. So you will not be attracted to this kind of a body. Make such an arrangement so that my body is beautiful and you'll be attracted to it. And also, we need a proper place for to have children. So please provide for a suitable house, and also, provide or make arrangement in such a way that I look beautiful enough for you to be attracted to me. So Prabhupada then in the purport talks about how, she wants a male child, and a male child happens when the husband is more attracted to the wife. And if the wife is more attracted to the husband, then it's a female child. So that's, and in Vedic, looks like in Vedic society, this was kind of known. And that's why Devhuti, desiring a male child, wants him to make that arrangement. So he would be, attracted to her, whereby she can get a male child. Next.
Maitreyi continued, O Vidur, seeking to please his beloved wife, the sage Kardam exercised his yogic power and instantly produced an aerial mansion that could travel at.
Yeah, so see, he's now fulfilling his wife's desire. So this is what happens. We can see that in case of Diti and Kashyapa wanted her to wait. You just wait, don't rush, wait. But in this case, look at her attitude. And by her attitude and by her propriety, now what has happened? Kardama is immediately, he's erected an aerial palace. Let's go ahead, 13.
It was a wonderful structure, bedecked with all sort of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time.
Yeah, so we see that in material world, everything deteriorates with the course of time. But the way this structure was built, that everything tended to increase with the course of time. So Prabhupada says in the purport, the castle created in the sky by Kardama Muni may be called a castle in the air. But by his mystic power of yoga, Kardama Muni actually constructed a huge castle in the air. To our feeble imagination, a castle in the sky is an impossibility. But if we scrutinizingly consider the matter, we can understand that it is not impossible at all. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can create so many planets carrying millions of castles in the air, a perfect yogi like Kardama Muni can easily construct one castle in the air. Yeah, let's go. 14, 15.
दिव्योपकारानुपेतं सर्वकाला सुखवहं पति कभी पाता कबीर विचित्र भीरालंकृतं स्रग्भिर्विचित्र माल्याभिर्मञ्जु सिंजात सद आंग्रिभिः दुकुल शोमा कौशेयर नाना वस्तेर virajitam. The castle was fully equipped with all necessary paraphernalia, and it was pleasing in all seasons. It was decorated all around with flags, festoons, and artistic work of variegated colors. It was further embellished with wreath of charming flowers that attracted sweetly humming bees, and with tapestries of linen, silk, and various other fabrics.
So now for the few verses, we are only going to hear about this castle and how, majestic it was. 16.
May I read sloka, Mataji?
Sorry?
The palace looked charming with beds, couches, fans, and seats, all separately arranged in 7 stories.
7 stories. I mean, not like a 1-story castle. This castle had 7 stories. So, quite wonderful. Amrendra Hari Prabhu, you're saying something?
Yes, Mataji, I'm requesting to read sloka.
You want to read shloka? Go ahead, read.
I'm asking, Mataji, may I read? I was asking, Mataji, I want to ask that may I read sloka?
Yeah, go ahead. That's what I'm saying. Please read shloka.
उपरि उपरि विन्यस्तस्नीरे सोऽपृथक् पृथक् क्षुप्ते कटिपुरे कान्तं पर्यतमुवान् नाजसैतनैः. Okay, in next Mataji, I'll read them. They will read.
Text 17. Its beauty was enhanced by artistic engravings here and there on the walls. The floor was of emerald with coral daisies.
So the floor was not tiles or marbles. It was emerald with coral daisies. Okay, next.
The palace was very beautiful with its coral thresholds at the entrance and its doors bedecked with diamonds. Gold pinnacles crowned its dome of sapphire.
Next.
The choicest rubies set in its diamond's walls, it appeared as though possessed of eyes. It was furnished with wonderful canopies and greatly valuable gates of gold.
So the floors are emerald, the walls are diamond. So we can only imagine what kind of castle this must be. Next, 20.
Vrindhari Prabhu, please read.
Thank you, Mataji. हंस पारावत व्रातये तत्र तत्र निकूजितं कृतिमानं मन्यमाने स्वान अधिरुक्ष अधिरुद्य च.
Here and there in that palace were multitudes of live swamps and pigeons, as well as artificial swamps and pigeons so lifelike that the real swamps rose above them again and again, thinking them live birds like themselves. Thus the palace vibrated with the sounds of these birds.
Yeah, so there are both live and artificial swans and pigeons. And these artificial swans and pigeons are so lifelike that the real birds could not differentiate. Rukmini.
Mataji, if I know back of my mind that these are not real, I will not be able to enjoy if somebody says me like this.
Yeah, of course. That's right, because we believe in it, because we know it's in Bhagavatam. This is Paramahansa Samhita, so everything is true. So just see, like we can't even imagine, let alone see. It's even beyond our imagination. Text 21. And what is very interesting is that Kardama Muni is capable of getting all this, and yet he chooses to live the way he does. So that's so incredible that they have all these powers, but they deliberately choose to live in a hermitage, a very, very simple life, not live like this. Yes, go ahead.
Castle had
Let him read you want to read the shloka first? Prabhu, go ahead, read the shloka.
बिहार स्थान विश्राम सर्वे प्रांगणंजिरै यथा उपजो संरचितये विस्मापनम इव आत्मनः.
the castle had pleasure grounds, resting chambers, bedrooms, and inner and outer yards designed with an eye to comfort. All this caused astonishment to the sage himself.
He himself is astonished to see this creation. And Prabhupada says, Kardama Muni, being a saintly person, was living in a humble hermitage. But when he saw the palace constructed by his yogic powers, which was full of resting rooms, rooms for sex enjoyment, and inner and outer yards, he himself was astonished. That is the way of a God-gifted person. A devotee like Kardama Muni exhibited such opulence by his yogic power at the request of his wife. But when the opulence was produced, he himself could not understand how such manifestations could be possible. When a yogi's power is exhibited, the yogi himself is sometimes astonished. So how can one get such empowerment? That's my question. How can one get such empowerment?
By the grace of Lord, Mataji?
Yeah, by the grace of Lord. And Prabhupada in 2.5.17 purport, he says, I'll just read it from there. No one could create anything without the sanction of the Lord. He's talking about Brahma's ability to create. Since everyone sees according to his ability, this ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto him. Lord empowers in proportion to one's surrender. So, the more the surrender, the more the empowerment. So can we think of any example from, from our scriptures or real life, where we have seen this kind of amazing empowerment and amazing facility? Rukmini.
Mataji, life of the Sri,
Go ahead, Mataji. Jagat Mataji.
Mataji, life of Srila Prabhupada, earlier when he started preaching, he has nothing. But when he served the Lord, and in the later stage of his life, he has everything. The disciples are servings like anything.
Yeah. And also, I was reminded of that CC marathon. Rameshwar Prabhu told him, impossible. 17 volumes of book in 2 months, impossible. But by the faith in the spiritual master and faith in the Lord, impossible becomes possible. So we can see that amazing empowerment. Any other example?
Mataji, the printing of Krishna book and getting
all
that manner is also, when Prabhupada, they were saying, how will we publish Krishna book? But Prabhupada said, you go and ask and it will happen. And the arrangement was made in such a manner that, yes, Krishna book did print according to his own wishes.
Yes, and even Baladev Vidyabhushan's, Govind Bhashya, impossible task to actually do a commentary on Vedanta Sutra in such a little time, but by empowerment, he managed to do that. Amrendra Hari Prabhu.
Maharaj Dhruv Maharaj has got the palace even more than his grandfather.
Yeah, that's the grace of the Lord, yes. And even Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's 90 or 91 years old when he writes CC. And, it's only by empowerment. How else does it happen? So, yeah. So magic happens when one becomes unalloyed servant of the Lord. It is magical. Imagine such an existence, where magic happens every day. So must be so blissful. 22.
ईदृकगृहं तत् पश्यन्ते न अतिप्रीतेन चेतसा सर्वभूत आस्य विज्ञ प्रावोचत कर्दम स्वयं.
Translation. When he saw Dehuti looking at the gigantic, opulent palace with a displeased heart, Kadamuni could understand her feelings because she could study the heart of anyone. Thus, he personally addressed his wife as follows.
So how could he study the heart of anyone? We discussed this. How does a spiritual master study the heart of a disciple?
Super soul, Mataji, connection of super soul.
Connection with the super soul. So he could understand the heart of Devhuti. Now Devhuti saw this amazing palace, and then she felt, oh, look at me. I don't fit in such an opulent place. I am so emaciated. I'm looking so ugly. How can I fit into such a palace? So now she's displeased because it's such a mismatch. 23.
निमज्य अस्मिन् हृदय वीरो विमानम् इदम् आरुह इदं शुक्लकृतं तीर्थम् आशीषां यापकं नृणाम्.
My dear Devhuti, you look very much afraid. First, bathe in the lake Bindu Sarovar created by Lord Vishnu himself, which can grant all desires of a human being, and then mount this airplane.
Okay, so how was Bindu Sarovar created? Who remembers?
By the tears or drop tears of the Lord.
By the tears of the Lord. So Prabhupada says the words Tirtham Ashisham Yapakam refer to the fulfillment of desires by bathing in a place of pilgrimage. Kardama Muni advised his good wife to bathe in Lake Bindu Sarovar so that she could revive the former beauty and luster of her body. Next, 24.
सातत भर्तु समादाय वचकूलयच येक्षणा सरजम बिभ्रति वासो बेणी बोताश मूर्धजा.
The lotus-eyed Devhuti accepted the order of her husband. Because of her dirty dress and the locks of matted hair on her head, she did not look very attractive.
So matted locks, which we were discussing earlier. So Prabhupada says it appears that Devhuti's hair had remained uncombed for many years and had become complicated in tangles. In other words, she neglected her bodily dress and comforts to engage in the service of her husband. Look at the degree of her dedication that she doesn't even get time to comb her hair or to take care of her body. Rukmini.
Mataji, we read the earlier chapter also, marriage of Kardam, before marriage of Kardamon and Devahuti. Mataji, I'm just thinking like that males are more responsible, that they are giving the intelligence, but somehow females are not able to understand at that moment. Later, they are both of them are repenting, but at that time, males are giving the intelligence. Is it so, Mataji? So this is
I don't understand, Rukmini. You'll have to explain it a bit. What do you mean?
Mataji,
What do you mean by giving intelligence? What are you referring to?
means this in this Kardamuni and Devahuti pastime also, if you take, Kardamuni is also telling Devahuti that nothing is more important than Lord. But at that very moment, they are not able to understand. She is not able to understand.
Kardamuni is telling Devahuti that it is important. What? Your voice broke. Sorry, couldn't hear you.
My internet is not stable today. That's
No problem. Say that again.
So, Mataji, Kardamuni said Mother Devahuti that love of Godhead is the best thing, right? There is nothing in material desires. If you know, it's for some time like this, but she is not able to understand. So does it mean? And in the previous chapter when we were reading, so does it mean that males are telling, but somehow females are not able to understand at that very moment, and later they are repenting?
It's not always in the case of male and female. Even it happens, sometimes spiritual master may say something which due to your material desire, you may not understand. And that could be very much a male, so it depends on the consciousness or preoccupation of the person who's hearing that particular instruction. But at the same time, when it comes in the case of Kardamamuni and Devahuti, this is not an ordinary union. She also knows that Supreme Personality of Godhead will come, and he also knows Supreme Personality of Godhead will come. So in their case, acharyas often comment that this is not an ordinary case. So we should not take it like that. Although Devahuti will lament like this, what you're saying that, I was offered a better opportunity for Brahma Gyan, but I chose to have children. But she did a service by bringing Kapila Dev and through him Sankhya Yoga. So it is not male and female. It can happen with anybody in any body. It depends on the preoccupation and the absorption.
So,
is that okay?
So Mataji, is it like that it is to make us understand this thing, this pastime has happened? Like if the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was not bewildered.
Every pastime, there are many levels of lessons, like we discussed after Varalila also. So even from this pastime, there are lessons to be learned at different levels. And we can probably just discuss them tomorrow if we have time. And maybe all of you can today, sit down and think about the lessons we have learned from this Kapila Lila so far. Because there are lessons at different levels. There are some levels, some lessons which are very apparent, and there are some lessons which are very subtle. So every pastime is meant to teach lessons to different people with different consciousness. So wherever one is, there is a lesson to be learned. Okay. Yeah, 25.
Angam chamal pangena sanchanam sabalastanam avivesa saraswatyah sarasiva jalasayam.
Her body was coated with a thick layer of dirt, and her breasts were discolored. She dove, however, into the lake which contained the sacred waters of the Saraswati.
Rai Ramananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I have one question in this regard. Actually, we see there how Mother Devahuti served Kardamuni, and she become very weak at that time. So my question is, why not Kardamuni interfere at that time? Why you are serving so much? Why you are doing this? So at that time, why didn't we interfere?
Yeah, because we can understand from the text that Kardamuni's absorption was only Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's just meditating on the Lord. He's always thinking about how to serve him, like that. So he does not notice anything else. He knows that she's rendering service, but beyond that, he doesn't notice anything else. And you'll see that even with very spiritually elevated persons in this world today, if they don't notice anything except for Krishna. I know in case of His Holiness Radha Govind Das Maharaj, that he's now in a state where he does not notice much, but he only sees Krishna. He can still recognize Krishna, doesn't recognize many people, but recognizes Krishna, recognizes Bhagavatam, because that's been his absorption. One would think that if you don't remember anything else, then why you won't remember even Krishna? But he remembers Krishna very well. He remembers, shlokas of Bhagavatam very well. He may not remember the people. And also once somebody, many years back, somebody visited him and said that Maharaj in Vrindavan, and that Maharaj, if you see, there's so much, so many buildings have come up. Vrindavan is not what it used to be. It's become like a concrete jungle. And he said, really? I didn't notice. So, because the preoccupation is such that they don't notice. The preoccupation is with the internal energy of the Lord. I don't know if I answered your question.
Mataji, it is okay that for the sannyasi and brahmachari, but he has accepted the wife. So it's not that it is his duty to serve wife also.
Yeah, it depends. See, you should understand his level. His level is something different altogether. And she's also not demanding. If she had demanded, then he would have provided. She's also not demanding. She's going on serving him. So he's carrying on with his meditation. He's carrying on with his service, his Krishna consciousness. But when she asks for it, look at what he's willing to provide. When he understands that my wife has a certain desire, she has a certain need, look at the length he's willing to go to satisfy that desire of hers. 26.
शान्तः सर्षिभे समस्ता सतानि दश कन्यका सर्वा किशोर वयसो ददर्शोत्पलगन्धया.
In a house inside the lake, she saw 1,000 girls, all in the prime of youth and fragrant like lotuses.
Yeah, so she enters the water, and Kardama Muni has also arranged for all these maid servants for her. That she can be properly taken care of and she could be properly pampered. So see the way he is now willing to take care of her desires. Next.
तां दृष्ट्वा संस्थाय प्रोच्यो प्राञ्जलः स्त्रिया वयं कर्म करिं तुभ्यं साधीनः करवाम किम्.
Translation. Seeing her, the damsel suddenly rose and said with folded hands, "We are your maidservants. Tell us what we can do for you."
Yeah, so the purport, Prabhupada says, while Devuti was thinking of what to do in that great palace in her dirty clothes, there were at once by the yogic powers of Kardama Muni 1,000 maid servants prepared to serve her. They appeared before Devuti within the water and presented themselves as her maid servants, simply awaiting her orders. Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead.
27.
28.
स्नानेन तां महानेन स्नापित्वा मनुष्यनं दुकुले निर्मलेनुत्ते ददुरसै च मानदाः.
The girls, being very respectful to Devahuti, brought her forth, and after bathing her with valuable oils and ointments, they gave her fine new spotless cloth to cover her body.
29.
भूषणानि पर अद्यानि वरीयसां दुत्तमे च उत्तमन्ति च अन्नं सर्वगुण उपेतं पानं च एव अमृत आस्वादम्.
Translation. They then decorated her with very excellent and valuable jewels, which shone brightly. Next, they offered her food containing all good qualities and a sweet inhabiting drinks called ashwam.
In the purport, Prabhupada says that ashwam is an Ayurvedic medical preparation. It is not a liquor. It is especially made from drugs and is meant to improve metabolism for the healthy condition of the life. So they have given her this portion so that, she can feel healthy and she can, retain some strength in her body. Next, text 30.
तथादर्शे स्वमात्मानं स्त्रीवडम्बीरजाम्बरं वर्जं कृत स्नापयनं कन्याभिः बहुमानितम्.
Then in a mirror, she beheld her own reflection. Her body was completely freed from all dirt, and she was adorned with a garland, dressed in unsullied robes and decorated with auspicious marks of tilak. She was served very respectfully by the maids.
So now, she's looking at herself and she can see that she has regained her beauty back. Her clothes are very beautiful. She is, decorated with tilak. So she was served very nicely by all these maids. 31.
स्नातं कृतशिरं स्नानं सर्वभरणभूषितं निष्कग्रीवं वलयीनं पूजत काञ्चनोपुरम्.
Her entire body, including her head, was completely washed by this, and she was decorated all over with ornaments. She wore a special necklace with a locket. There were dangles on her wrists and anklets rolled about her ankles.
Yeah, so it is mentioned that how she took a full bath, she washed her hair, everything, and now she's decorated very nicely. 32.
स्वर्ण्य अध्यस्तया काञ्चन्या बहुरत्नया हारेण च महार्हेण रुचकेन च भूषितम्.
About her hips she wore a girdle of gold set with numerous jewels, and she was further adorned with a precious pearl necklace and auspicious substances.
And so in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that auspicious substances include saffron, kumkum, and sandalwood pulp. So she was, she was adorned with these auspicious substances. And before taking a bath, there were other auspicious substances such as turmeric mixed with mustard seed oil, which are smeared all over the body. All kinds of auspicious substances were used to bathe Devhuti from top to toe. 33.
सुदता सुभ्रुवा लक्ष स्निग्ध अपाङ्गेन चक्षुषा पद्मकोशस्थिधानेन अनकश्चन तन्मुखम्.
Her countenance shone with beautiful teeth and charming eyebrows, her eyes distinguished by lovely moist corners that defeated the beauty of lotus buds. Her face was surrounded by dark curling tresses.
Yeah, so now the beauty of her face is being described. Next.
यदा ऋषीणामदयितं पति तत्र चास्ते सह स्त्रीभिर्यास्ते स प्रजापतिः.
When she thought of her great husband, the best of the sages, Kardamuni, who was very dear to her, she, along with all the maidservants, at once appeared where he was.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting purport. Prabhupada explains that it appears from this verse that in the beginning, Devhuti thought herself to be dirty and dressed in a very niggardly way. When her husband asked her to enter the lake, she saw the maidservants and they took care of her. Everything was done within the water. And as soon as she thought of her beloved husband Kardama, she was brought before him without delay. These are some of the powers attained by perfect yogis. They can immediately execute anything they desire. Next.
भर्तु पुस्तात् आत्मानं स्त्रीसहस्रसवृतं तदा निशाम्य तद्गो गतिं संशयं प्रत्यपद्यत.
She was amazed to find herself surrounded by 1,000 maids in the presence of her husband and to witness his yogic power.
Yeah, so Prabhupada says that she saw everything miraculously done, yet when brought before her husband, she could understand that it was all due to his great yogic power. She understood that nothing was impossible for a yogi like Kardamamuni. She could understand that this was all arranged by him. All these maid servants, everything was coming because of his yogic power. 37.
सताम कृतम् अमलं स्नानं बिभ्रजातिं पूर्वत आत्मानो बिभ्रतिं रूपं संवेद रुचि तीनं विद्याधरी सहस्रेण सेव्यमानं सुवासरं जातभावो विमानं तदारोहर्य मित्रहन्.
Sage could see that Devhuti had washed herself clean and was shining forth, as though no longer his former. She had regained her own original beauty as the daughter of a prince. Dressed in excellent robes, her charming dress duly girded, she was waited upon by 1,000 Gandharva girls. O destroyer of the enemy, his fondness for her grew, and he placed her on the ship on the aerial mansion.
Yeah, and the purport Prabhupada says that before her marriage, when Devhuti was brought by her parents before the sage Kardama, she was perfectly beautiful princess. And Kardama Muni remembered her former beauty, but after her marriage, she was engaged in the service of Kardama Muni. She neglected to take care of her body like a princess, since there were no means for such care. Her husband was living in a cottage, and since she was always engaged in serving him, her royal beauty disappeared, and she became just like an ordinary maidservant. But after being bathed by the Gandharva girls by the order of Kardama Muni's yogic power, she regained her beauty, and Kardama Muni felt attracted to the beauty she had shown before her marriage. So this was the whole, this was her worry that Kardama Muni would not be attracted to my present body, and she wanted that her, she should have some kind of, facility whereby she could attract his mind. She could attract him to herself. 38.
तस्मिन् तस्मिन् कुलात्तं महिमा प्रिययानुरक्तो विद्याधरीभिः रुचिचीर्णवप्लो विमाने बभ्राज उत्कच कमुद गणवान पिच्च सारा विभाव्रेत इवोडोपनिर्तभस्ता.
Translation. Though seemingly attached to his beloved consort, while served by the Gandharva girls, the sage did not lose his glory, which was mastery over himself. In the aerial mansion, Kardama Muni with his consort shone as charmingly as the moon in the midst of the stars in the sky, which causes rows of lilies to open in ponds at night.
Yeah, so very interesting thing to notice is that even though she was looking very beautiful, and he was attracted to her, but he did not lose his glory, which was the mastery over himself. He was completely self-controlled. His senses were completely controlled. He did not lose that control. 39.
तेनाष्टलोका परविहार इन कुलाच इंद्र द्रोणीशवन वनंगा मारुत सौभगासो सिद्धनुतोति दोदित पात शिव वस्तुनासो रे में चिरम धन वल्लभ नावरुथि.
In the aerial mansion, he traveled to the pleasure valleys of Mount Meru, which were rendered all the more beautiful. Which were rendered all the more beautiful by cool, gentle, fragrant breezes that stimulated passion. In these valleys, the treasures of the god Kuvera, surrounded by beautiful women and praised by siddhas, generally enjoyed pleasure. Kardamuni, also surrounded by the beautiful damsels and his wife, went there and enjoyed for many, many years.
Yeah, so in the purport, Prabhupada says that in the aerial mansion, Kardama Muni traveled throughout the 8 directions, controlled by the different demigods described above. And as the demigods go to Mount Meru, he also went there to enjoy life. When one is surrounded by young, beautiful girls, sex stimulation naturally becomes prominent. Kardama Muni was sexually stimulated, and he enjoyed his wife for many, many years in that part of Mount Meru. But his sex indulgence was praised by many, many siddhas, beings who have attained perfection, because it was intended to produce good progeny for the good of universal affairs. So Prabhupada mentions that any kind of creation requires passion. So even to produce children, some amount of passion has to be there. So, so we can see that there is passion, but it is with a purpose. Next, text 40.
वैश्वम्भके सुरसने नंदने पुष्पक भद्रके मानसे च तरुते च सरे मेरा मया रताः
Who's reading?
Sorry, my mic was muted. Satisfied by his wife, he enjoyed in that aerial mansion not only on Mount Meru but in different gardens known as Vaishram, Bhak, Surasen, Nandan, Pushpa, Bhadrak, and Chetrarathya, and by the Manas Sarovar Lake.
Next.
भ्राजिष्णुना विमानेन कामदेन महीयसा वैमानिकातये यतिस्तेत चरम लोकान् यथा निलः
He traveled in that way through the various planets as the air passes uncontrolled in every direction, coursing through the air in that great and splendid aerial mansion, which could fly at his will. He surpassed even the demigods.
Yeah, so imagine this aerial mansion is flying everywhere in every direction. And it is said he surpassed even the demigods, and Prabhupada explains in his purport, how is that so? The planets occupied by the demigods are restricted to their own orbits, but Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could travel all over the different directions of the universe without restriction. So it seems that demigods can, their planets are in a certain orbit and they can only be there, but Kardama Muni could go from one place to another. And then Prabhupada says that it is not possible to travel to any other planets because by the laws of nature, even the demigods cannot move from one planet to another. But Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could surpass the strength of the demigods and travel in space in all directions. Rukmini?
Mataji, sorry to ask this question, but I want to ask that he's a great yogi. He was not inclined to. Yes, the purpose was to come off Lord Kapila. Mother Devhuti said. And then why he enjoyed for many, many years?
To satisfy her, because she has served him for so many years. So, and also, he wanted to satisfy her because this is the reciprocation for her service. She wanted to have children. She wanted to enjoy. So he has done it to satisfy her.
So for many years, Mataji.
For many years, yes.
Thank you.
For many years.
Is it the best honeymoon story?
My best honeymoon story? Yes, of course it is. Bhagavatam has everything for everybody.
Yes.
Whether it's a honeymoon story, it's a love affair, whatever it is, Bhagavatam has it all.
Yes.
Next, 42.
Vaiji, can I add something?
Yes.
I heard it in a class. I think it was a Canto 8 lecture going on. I don't remember the speaker. So they said we were discussing basically Yati and the marriage which happens, with both the girls. I forget the name right.
Sharmishta
Sharmishta and Devyani. So that speaker was, very kind and he wanted to add a little element of humor. So he says, you want some scandals? Come to Bhagavatam. You want some affairs? You come to Bhagavatam. Yes. You don't have to go anywhere. You can forget your television. You can enjoy Bhagavatam like that.
Yeah, Bhagavatam has everything, all kind of intrigue, all kind of schemings, or everything is there. So whatever rasa you're looking for, you'll get it in Bhagavatam. Yeah, very true. 42.
किं दुरापादनं तेषां पुंसां उद्धं चेतसाम्
Prabhu, you are mute. Okay. Maybe he just wanted to read 2 lines.
It is difficult to achieve for determined men who have taken refuge of the streams of Lord's lotus feet. His feet are the source of sacred rivers like the Ganges, which put an end to the dangers of mundane life.
Yeah, so see, we heard about his yogic power, and now Maitreya says that what is difficult for a person who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord? Such a person is always victorious. Such a person is, he's going to get whatever he wants. So if you meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna, there is a symbol called conch. There is that conch symbol. So here it says the feet are the source of sacred rivers like Ganges. So that conch is representation of Jala Tattva. So by taking shelter of the conch, so one actually gets purified of all the sins, just like one gets purified by taking bath in Ganga. And also, conch is also sign of victory. So one who takes shelter of that particular symbol on the feet of the Lord will be victorious everywhere. So why is it, why it should not be surprising at all that Kardama Muni was able to achieve all this, because he had taken complete shelter of the Lord. And Prabhupada in his purport says that for any living entity, therefore, who has taken shelter of the holy lotus feet of the Lord, nothing is impossible. Kardama Muni is special not because he was a great mystic, but because he was a great devotee. So that is to be noted. And after a few lines, he says, although yogis can perform wonderful feats, as Kardama has already displayed, Kardama was more than a yogi because he was a great devotee of the Lord. Therefore, he was more glorious than an ordinary yogi. And then Prabhupada says, for a person like Kardama Muni, there is no question of being conditioned. He was already a liberated soul and better than the demigods, who are also conditioned. Although he was enjoying with his wife and many other women, he was above material conditioned life. Therefore, the word Vyasanatnayaha is used to indicate that he was beyond the position of a conditioned soul. He was transcendental to all material limitations. So this is the condition of a pure devotee of the Lord. They can achieve anything and yet not entangled. 43.
प्रेक्षयित्वा भुवः गोलं पत्न्या स्वस्थस्थया बहुआश्चर्यमहायोगी स्वश्रमया न्यवर्तत.
To showing his wife the globe of the universe and its different arrangements, full of many wonders, the great yogi Kardama Muni returned to his own hermitage.
Yeah. So Prabhupada says in the purport towards the middle of this first paragraph, he says, by God's grace, by nature's law, each and every planet is made differently and has different wonderful features. All such wonders were personally experienced by Kardama Muni while traveling with his wife. Yet he could return again to his humble hermitage. He showed his princess wife that although he was living in the hermitage, he had the power to go everywhere and do anything by mystic yoga. And that is the perfection of yoga, to not get entangled in mystic powers, but to remember who's the source of that mystic power. In the 11th canto, it comes that all the mystic powers are actually provided by the grace of the Lord. So he is actually the source of all mystic powers. And who else knew where their power came from? In Bhagavatam, who else, whose example we know, who knows that, who says that I know where my power is? Sorry?
Arjun, Mataji. Arjun?
Arjun, when Krishna leaves, then he says that the Gandiv is there, the same chariot is there, I am the same person, yet the power has gone because he was the source of my power. Who else?
Brahma.
Yeah, Brahma tells Narada that, the Lord, Supreme Lord is the source of my power. This creative energy that I have is by his grace. Who else? Prahlad Maharaj says that to Hiranyakashipu, that the source of my power is the same as yours. When he says, where are you getting all this power from? He says the source is the same. And then also we see that in case of Bali Maharaj, he realizes that this is all Krishna or Vishnu is the source of everything. So even if he takes everything, there's no loss because everything that I have is coming by his grace. So we see such wonderful examples in Bhagavatam where, these wonderful devotees, exalted devotees, they recognize who's the source of their power. So this is an exercise for us to remember who's the source of all my power, all my intelligence, who's the source of all my skills, my talents, my opulence, so to always remember that. And then at the end, Prabhupada says, by the actions of Kardama Muni, we can understand that in spite of his immense mystic power, he remained a devotee of the Lord. That is the real position of every living entity. And this is a goal of our lives, to always remember that, we are supposed to be a devotee. We are supposed to be servants of the Lord under any circumstances, whatever may be the externals, whatever may happen to us externally, but internally we always remain the devotee of the Lord. 44.
विभज्यानवधात्मानं मानवीं सोरतोषुकां रामं यन्ने मे वर्षपूगान् मुहुर्वत.
After coming back to his hermitage, he divided himself into 9 personalities just to give pleasure to Devahuti, the daughter of Manu, who was eager for sex life. In that way, he enjoyed with her for many, many years, which just passed like a moment.
So he divided into 9 forms. And then Prabhupada says that for a yogi, it is possible to divide himself into 9 forms. And then not more. He said the Supreme Lord can divide himself into unlimited forms, but a yogi can do up to 9 forms. And then he gives example of Saubhari Muni, who divided himself into 8 forms. So this is, he divided himself into 9 forms to completely satisfy his wife. Lakshmi?
Mataji, in purport of text 42, although it is written that Kardamani was above material and conditional life, but it's written that he was enjoying with his wife and many other women. But we know that he wanted to please his wife, to satisfy his wife, to fulfill her wish of begetting a child. So why it's written, then many other women he was enjoying with his wife.
So this used to, all the maid servants, some of the maid servants also. So this used to be the system that, they would be there sometimes present to provide some extra enjoyment. So this used to be there even for kings and, sages like that.
Okay.
Not in today's time, but definitely it was okay because they were self-controlled. So I'm thinking that let's stop here. If anybody has any question before we end, we can try to take that. But otherwise,
Why we have
Hare Krishna.
one doubt comes in my mind, Mataji. Why he divided him into 9?
Wait, tomorrow Prabhupada will answer that in one of his purports. He will say that because, he wanted to satisfy her and she was looking to enjoy and she was agitated. So that's why he divided himself into 9 forms. And Prabhupada will talk about it and what will be the result of that. So we'll do that tomorrow. Okay. So maybe today what you can do is go back and write down some of the lessons from this Kapila Leela so far. And if we have time, we can discuss that tomorrow. Rukmini?
Mataji, they are saying that after coming back to his hermitage, he divided himself into 9 personalities. After coming back to his, so what was the castle for them?
Castle was to give her pleasure, to take her around, show her the world, give her that pleasure. So that's why. And he enjoyed there for many years with her. And then he came back to his hermitage. Now you need that proper consciousness to have children.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So God willing, we'll meet tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.